Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this special edition of the Trig Podcast of Joy on this beautiful Friday morning, almost 11 a.m. here in the Southern California area, Pacific time in the LA area. Thank you for being here. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to this video. Please like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell on YouTube, Periscope, Twitch, Facebook, wherever you're watching me, Instagram. Thank you for being here. I had a question here by someone on Periscope. I want to thank you for that question, for the hello as well. Who shamed me? Beautiful family. Thank you so much. Well, I guess that's a really good place to start, right? So I named this particular episode, How to Stop Shaming Others. And I'm not really talking about, per se, someone shaming me. I'm actually talking more about how I want to stop and how I want to help all of us stop shaming other people. Because I find that I do that. And it's not who I want to be. Especially as a man of God, as a spiritual leader, obviously you want to be leading others from love, not from shame. But the truth still stands that shame is a very powerful emotion that I feel, that many of us feel, not everyone, but I would say maybe a third of the population, maybe half, maybe more, feel very strongly. And so I appreciate the question here about who shamed me, because in some ways, and maybe this is exactly the case, when we shame other people, it stems from our own sense of guilt and shame. And perhaps that shaming comes from not just nurture, as I say, or nature, but from nurture, meaning from our circumstances. So it's a good question and a good way to start this particular video. So let me first say, when it comes to shame, that there are three different ways, and I'm going to just look up some notes that I have written here, that we as humans look at shame and fear. So there are three ways that, or maybe three, I don't know if they're emotions per se, obviously they are, but there are three maybe ways that we show up in the world, could be one way to put it. Some of us deal with shame. Others deal with fear. And then others feel they're filled, or they have rage or anger. Now you might say, well, you have all three. And I know we all have all three of these emotions in us, right? But it seems to be from all the stuff I've studied on Enneagram stuff, Enneagram, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of a spiritual type of personality test. And it's deeper than just the other stuff that I've studied, but the Enneagram has these three kinds of categories. First one is called the heart and shame triad, because there are three kinds of people that tend to be in this triad, or in this particular section. They're heart people, and I am one of them. Maybe you can relate to me. We're heart people. We love deeply, but our vice, or the thing that sometimes drives us, is shame. And so therefore we are apt to, in our good days, to love people and to speak from our heart. But when we're under stress, or when we're feeling like we're failing, then we tend to shame other people. There are other people, the second triad, the second set of people, are head and fear people. So these are individuals who are in their heads. They're thinkers. They are very logical. It's not that they don't have a heart. It's just they lead with their head, with analysis. And inside of that is fear. And so there's something in them, perhaps childhood stuff, or as I said, maybe it's the environment that they grew up in, where they show up, or they manifest fear. And so they maybe cause fear in other people, or they may speak out of fear and cause other people to fear as well. That's on their bad days, but on their good days, they help everyone think things through. And then the last triad is what's called the gut and anger or rage triad. Gut and anger, or gut and rage. And these are individuals who they express or they perceive life from their gut. They're people that can feel a room. They know what's going on in their gut. They have a gut sense about things. You know how people will say, I have a gut feeling. And so that's their gift. The vice, or what sometimes is inside of them, is rage, is anger. And so if pushed to the limits, when push comes to shove, is that the phrase? Then they may express anger to other people, or they may become angry or filled with rage towards others. You may perceive them as people that are filled with anger or rage. Maybe that's another way to put all this, is the first triad, you may perceive them as people who shame you. The second triad, you may perceive them as people who fear, who are always afraid of something. And then the third triad, you may perceive those people as angry people. So that's kind of where I'm starting from. But going back to kind of a little bit of my story, and again, this insightful question about who shamed me, I wasn't really even thinking of it this way, but I think it's a very important question. No one shamed me. I would say that my tendency to shame other people, and again, I'm being very, very vulnerable here with this, because we normally don't like people who shame us, right? Nor do we like people who are angry at us or who make us feel afraid. But obviously, these are things that we deal with as humans, right? And so when it comes to why do I tend to shame, again, this is just when I'm off my rocker, as we say. Why do I tend to shame other people or make them feel like they're not enough? Well, obviously it's because I'm not feeling like I'm enough. So going back even further, when do I feel like I'm not enough? Well, when I'm failing at things. Because for the type of personality type that I am, I'm a heart person, but yet the way I perceive or what I do with my emotions, it often moves me to want to succeed. And when I'm not succeeding at something, whether it's, in my case, my church is not, 10,000 people, my education, I don't have a PhD, or my body, I'm not 180 pounds, for me, these are the things, right? I mean, those are the things that tend to make, or maybe that I'm not a perfect human being, that I make mistakes, that I sin, and that I am not a perfect man. So this is a very spiritual kind of thing, right? I mean, it's the typical Catholic kind of upbringing. I wasn't raised Catholic, but I was raised in the Christian tradition. And so a lot of people will tend to say that that's what church does, right? It makes you feel ashamed, but it really wasn't church that made me feel shamed, ever. I never felt shame from church or from church leaders or from my parents. No way. Or from my grandmother. I would say there may have been moments where, I think I can think of a few things that made me feel very much embarrassed. I remember one time I was coming home, maybe I was in 6th grade, and there was this kid who wanted to, poke at my sister, mess with my sister. I don't think it was malicious, but he was just being a kid, right? Kind of a brat, a bully, I guess we would call it now. This is, 40 years ago. And I tried to defend my sister, but instead this guy hit me, and I wasn't able to defend myself enough. I guess I'm thinking of it this way. He did have another kid with him, and so I think maybe it was 2-on-1. I defended myself. I definitely did protect my sister, but I got hit, and maybe I hit him back. I don't remember. All I remember is being hit, and it happened twice. It happened maybe the next week or so, and both times I defended my sister who was walking home with me. And I don't know if the beef was with me or with my sister. Maybe, I'm not really sure on that. But I remember walking home feeling embarrassed. that I hadn't protected my sister or that I didn't know how to fight good enough. I did defend myself. And so I remember walking home crying, which embarrassed me tremendously. You have to remember, I grew up without a father. I grew up without my parents. And so I didn't have that guy talk, I guess, on how to fight back. I'm not sure if I would have, meaning if I would have fought back better. But I remember walking home and there was this, I don't know if my sister told me about this or maybe, I don't know. But there was this lady, friend of my grandma, I was raised by my grandma, who lived on the way home. So every day we'd walk by her house. We used to walk home. And I don't know if she saw me crying or holding my face or whatever, but she took me into her apartment and put ice on my face and took care of me. And I was fine after that. I don't have any problems with bullying, or I'm not afraid of fighting. I actually now box and I lift weights, and I became a very skilled, I would say, novice athlete. But I think that those things definitely did shame me. I think it would shame anyone, right? But for me, those are those kind of formative moments. I would say maybe something that shamed me a lot was not being able to do things that a man normally does. For example, change the oil or drive a car, or because, as I said, growing up without my father especially, I mean, my father loved me till the day he died, but we were apart for most of my life, for most of my teens and adult years. He was in my life when it mattered, when I got married, these very pivotal moments, he was here. He would travel from back home to see me here in the States. But I know that I remember this one time I was driving this van, and I was maybe 30, something like that, 28, and I didn't know how to drive this van. I felt so awkward. I felt so scared. I felt ashamed that even though I'm a grown man with kids, I didn't even know how to drive a stupid van. But no one taught me, right? I mean, how would I know? Changing the oil. I remember when my wife was, I think, she of course wanted to have the oil changed in her car, and I had to learn how to do this. I mean, normal stuff, and so when it comes to shame, I think that we tend to shame other people when we ourselves feel shame, right? When we ourselves have that sense of shame, or when we feel like we've been shamed, then it's easy to then express that to other people. Or, as I said, there are 3 different types. If you deal with fear, it's easy to then project fear to other people. Everyone is anxious around you. Or if you deal with anger or rage, then the same thing. You might express anger, and people may see you or perceive you as an angry type or a rage person. So what am I doing to kind of work through some of these things? I would say that in the area of rage, which is a thing that, or not rage, shame, which is a thing that I deal with, the thing that I am learning to do is to, I think first of all, just confess it to myself. Just to acknowledge that I can tend to make people feel ashamed, not ashamed of themselves, but to shame them, to make them feel like they're not good enough. This is again when I'm kind of at my lowest. This is not the typical me. None of these things are the typical us. These are the things, whether it's shame, fear, or rage, these 3 things I'm talking about, they tend to happen when we are at our lowest, when something has gone wrong, when there's pressure. We call it in psychology when we're under stress. When we're under stress, these are the things that tend to come out. Is, in my case, shame, maybe in other people's cases, fear or rage. So those are the 3 things that tend to come out when we're under stress. When we're at our best or whole, what comes out from my types is love. Maybe for you, it's more of you're a very logical person and you can help people think things through. Or the third type is you're more of a gut person. You have good instincts. But sticking to shame and that this first part, as I said, I think that's where my shame comes from, is from being alone, not having that support system, feeling embarrassed, feeling like I don't know what I should know, wanting to provide and not always being able to. So now, the way that I tend to shame others when I'm under stress is in the same way. I tell them they're not good enough. I make people feel like they're not measuring up to some standard, that some stupid or some impossible standard. I tend to come across as angry or upset, or that, you're not good enough, that you need to do more. So I tend to think that you need to do more. So it's this thing of, it's not perfectionism, it's just more of you need to produce more. Because the way that I deal with my own shame when I'm failing at something, when I can't succeed at something, is I push myself to crazy limits. I expect unhuman type of stuff from myself. And most of the time I can do it. But when I can't do it, or when I can't get there and can't get the results that I expect of myself, then that's when the shame or the sense of failure sets in. And so therefore, that's what I begin to ooze out to other people. If you're more of a fear person, then the same thing goes. For you, you might, under stress, you might feel, or what comes out of you is fear, anxiety. You're afraid of everyone. You're maybe a paranoid even. You think that the sky is falling. You tend to, instead of being a good analytical type that's thinking things through, you become this person who is paralyzed, is just afraid to even get up in the morning and go to work, because you might get into a car accident because of something that happened in your life when you were younger. And so that fear, not only does it control you when you're under stress, but it's what you project to other people. So everyone now sees you as an anxious type, and they can't seem to perhaps count on you, or they can't have any fun with you because you're afraid. And then if you're more in the gut and anger triad, instead of people trusting your instinct and respecting your gut feelings, they're more concerned that you're maybe angry. And so you may come across as an angry type when you're under stress. Again, stress versus wholeness. In wholeness, you're someone who people can trust because they think, wow, you know right from wrong. You know, I can trust your gut. You know how you can trust certain people's gut because they're trustworthy, right? So instead of rage or anger, you're perceiving or getting from that person a solid gut feeling, and you trust them, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go with her. I'm going to go with him, go with his gut. I trust his gut. I trust, you know how you have maybe a friend or a husband or a mom or a sibling that you say, you know, I trust your gut. Whatever you think, I trust it because your gut's always right. You know those people, right? Now, the second type I think I missed, when they're at their best or when they're whole, they are very logical people. And I don't mean that that's a bad thing. Like when I have a friend who does my taxes, I want him to be very logical, right? I don't want him to be heart or gut, like, well, I think this is right. No, or, well, we'll see what happens. No, I want my tax guy to be very logical. There are many professions, many things where you want logic. Logic is important. I wish I was more logical. I tend to be a heart person. Well, I am. And again, we all have these three things in us. We're all heart, head, and gut. We're all filled with shame, fear, and rage. It's just how we tend to show up in the world. And so back to shame. What can I do to overcome this tendency to shame other people, to live in shame myself, to live in that sense of failure? Well, this is not I don't feel like I'm an expert in this, but these are the things that I know I need to do and I'm trying to do. Sometimes I do it well, sometimes I don't. Obviously, the first thing is to always remember that in the eyes of God, my mom, my wife, I'm not a failure. My father's no longer with me, so it's hard for me to I guess, put them in my life right now. But in the eyes of the people that, excuse me, that are in my life, my mom, my wife, God is a tough one sometimes, I would say. I sometimes think that God, we tend to see God through the lenses of our own trauma. Let me say that again. We tend to see God through the lenses of our own trauma. And so because my trauma is, I was alone and left alone most of my life, and I had to just sort of manage my own emotions by myself and find my own way through life and succeed on my own. That's just what my fleshly mind tells me, what my earthly sinful trauma tells me. I know that's not true, but when I tend to feel that way about my life, then that's how I see God. Like, well, when push comes to shove, or when I really need him, he's not going to be there. So I better take care of this on my own. Of course, that's not true, but that's what trauma tells me. So trauma tells us. And so the first thing I do is, or the first tips, I guess, for us, tip for you and me, is to remember that you're not a failure in the eyes of the people that love you. So as I said, for me, I'm not a failure in the eyes of my mom. I've asked her just because I needed to make sure. I remember asking my mom, who am I to you? Basically, I was asking her, am I a failure to you? And of course she said no. I mean, of course she said, son, I love you no matter what. I remember my grandma especially telling me this a lot. I had, I'm dark skinned, right? And so I remember these days when I would get a haircut. I was maybe in my early 20s. Maybe I was dating someone, or I've always been vain with my look. So I would get my hair all 80s cool styled with hairspray and everything. I'd wear some 80s sweater and some white pants, and I was the Tubbs from Miami Vice, if you remember that show. Shout out to Miami Vice and Don Johnson and Tubbs. And I would come into my grandma's room, or we grew up in a 1-bedroom, so I would go out to the living room and say, hey, look, Grandma, how do I look? Then I wanted her to say, man, you are hot. You are a most beautiful kid ever. I'm in 20. Maybe I'm even younger, 18, who knows? And she'd say, no matter what you wear, you're the same Negro to me. Yeah. You're the same David to me. You're the same. And that may sound bad. Maybe I'm not expressing it well, but that meant everything to me. She was telling me, I don't care what you wear, son. I don't care how cool your haircut is or your awesome Payless shoes may look. I had the ones that had like the little, it was like what do you call those couches? What are they made of? Mimbre was what we call it in English, in Spanish. It's like threaded stuff, threaded shoes, fake leather from Payless. Probably cost me $9. I think I had a little cash and I bought my own shoes. She's like, I don't care what you wear. I love you no matter what. It's like that little nursery book. What is it with the little rabbits? I love you for who you are. Or I don't know. I love that one. My wife read those to all of our children. I love that nursery book. And so those are the moments that matter most to me. When when I've been surrounded by what we would call unconditional love. As I said, with God, it's a little more complicated because I have to, it's almost like project his love onto me. Like I have to say, well, he was there through my grandmother. He was there through my friends, and through my wife who rescued me. And there are verses and scripture and songs, of course, that move me, that make me think of God as a God who protects, as a God who, that's why Psalm 91 is so important to me. Those who dwell in the shelter of the Almighty will rest, or something like that. I know it in Spanish, but it's a very important psalm to me because it speaks of the rest and the shelter of God. You know, for a kid like me that had no shelter, who had to tend for himself. So if you're like me, you know, shelter is very important. To know that God is a shelter. So to me, more than anything, more than friend, savior, companion, I mean, he's all those things. But to me, the thing that I need the most, to know the most from God, is to know that he's my shelter, that I can come under the shadow of the Almighty. And when I'm when I'm living in that truth and I feel that love, that comfort, then it doesn't matter how big or small my church is, or how many degrees I have or don't, or how perfect my body is, or how my knee hurts, or how whatever. It doesn't matter to me because I am dwelling in the shadow of the Almighty. Let me read that verse. It's so powerful that I want to actually read that here for you. Let me see if this shows up here on the screen. Psalm 91. Psalm 91. Let's see here. It says, he who dwells, see, this is beautiful, beautiful language. He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High. See, that's for a 3, that's what my type is, Enneagram type is. For someone who deals with shame and failure and all this stuff, this is powerful language. He who dwells in the shelter, see, there's shelter of the Most High, will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. And I believe that Almighty there is El Shaddai. I'm pretty sure in the Hebrew that's El Shaddai. I will say to the Lord, my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. For he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly pestilence. He will cover you with his pinions, and under his wings you will find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and buckler. An idea what a buckler is. He will not fear the terror of the night. See, I was afraid at night a lot, because I grew up alone, and my grandmother often dealt with illness, and so I was always afraid that she would die and I would be left alone, or that I would get deported and I would be left without hope, or that, those are my fears. And so to know that because of the shadow of the Almighty, I will not fear is very powerful to me. 1,000 may fall at your side, 10,000 at your right hand. In my home country, many people my age died. And so this is very relevant to me, how even though thousands may die or may fall around me, none of this stuff will come near me. And by the grace of God, that's true. You will only look with your eyes, verse 8, and see the recompense of the wicked, because you have made the Lord your dwelling place, the Most High, who is my refuge. No evil shall be allowed to befall you, no plague come near your tent. For he will command his angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. On their hands they will bear you up, lest you strike your foot against a stone. You will tread on the lion and the adder. I wish this language was more understandable. The young lion and the serpent you will trample underfoot, because he holds fast to me in love. I will deliver him. I will protect him because he knows my name. When he calls to me, I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will rescue him and honor him. With long life, I will satisfy him and show him my salvation. A beautiful song. There's so much there. So much there that is so relevant for those of us who deal with shame and with feeling unprotected or unprotected. Like maybe nobody stood up for us when we needed them the most. I'm just looking up a few words here. El Shaddai, Almighty. Yeah, El Shaddai. Yeah, that's what it is. Most High. The shelter is Sitra. Yeah. So very powerful stuff. And so that's the first tip. And maybe that's the main tip that I have as far as kind of what to do with shame. It's to recall the love of your family. In my case, my grandmother, my mom, my wife. And I have also other mentors, my therapist. I have a few friends right now in my life that are true just believers in me. All these individuals, they love me so deeply, unconditionally, to the best of their ability. And they take away that shame. You know, the Bible is very clear about how the blood of Jesus takes away our shame. And for me, as I said, it's not some sort of salvation thing. It's more of a mother hen, of a dwelling place, of a home. And so when it says that he takes away my shame, I feel more that God is a safe dwelling place. The home that I didn't have for many years, he became that home. And that's why I love my house now, because it's a safe place for my kids, for myself, for my wife, for our family. And I had that safety. So, I mean, I'm not saying that I wasn't safe, but when you grow up with bullets around you and with bombs being dropped on you, it's tough to feel safe. Or when you grow up with a grandmother who you're afraid that she may pass away or may not be able to take care of you, and you're 10, 11, 12, or you're afraid of the immigration people coming to your door and taking you away. That stuff messes with you. And most of that, as I've said, has been healed. But I've been healed of that. But when I'm in my shame, it definitely tends to come back. And then I project shame to others. But when I am filled with the love of God and I remember his mercy and dwell on these verses or meditate on these verses, that really connects me to my truth, to the truth of the love of God. So I would say that's the number one thing. And I don't know if I have 3 tips. I think that's the main thing that calms my shame. I would say maybe number 2 is to, as I said, is to be aware, be self-aware. Is to know when you're in that place of shame and where you're projecting, whether it's fear or rage, and to control yourself and to know that you're speaking out of something unhealthy in you, out of your vice, out of your sinful behavior, out of who you don't want to be. Instead, you want to be someone who's very logical. Let's say if you're a head type. Instead, you want to be someone whose gut is trustworthy. If you're a gut type, or if you're a heart type like me, you want to lead with your heart, not with rage. You want to lead with your heart. So you want people to feel that you love them. And the only way to do that is if you know that you are protected, that you are not a failure, that you are a success in the eyes of those people who love you most, in the eyes of God, the people that love you most, and those friends that are closest to you, or a spiritual counselor, a therapist, a spiritual director. These are the things that make us heart types, connect with our hearts. That safety that has to be there. That's why my wife, I adore her so much, because she is the safety that I've always needed. My grandma was my safety. When I was young, it was my parents, of course, and my grandma, now my wife. And these are symbols that are very important to me. And behind all of that, I see the hand of God, how he's put people in my life that have become my safety. Sometimes I look around, I'm out there looking for safety from random people or places or churches or success, and that always leaves me empty-handed. But when I'm in my truth, I get my safety out of Psalm 91, out of my relationship with my wife, out of the people around me that love me, our 3 beautiful kids that love me so much. You may not be able to see it, but behind me, I think you might be able to a little bit. I just turned 50 last month, and it was an easy thing. I didn't feel sad, old, or any of that. It was a celebration. I had a great week. And I still have the birthday cards behind me, because now that our kids are, older now, they express things in different ways than when they were little kids. And their words meant so much to me that I still have them back there, even though it's been a month now, because I want to remember how I'm surrounded by love. That when I feel like I'm failing at life and I'm tempted to shame other people because my own shame rises in me, I go back to those cards. Sometimes I don't even have to read them. I just look at them and I feel the love. Sometimes the love is so overwhelming that it calms my fears, that it makes me cry uncontrollably. Sometimes I feel so loved that I think I'm so undeserving of this love. It must be the Holy Spirit. It must be the blessing and the grace of God. How can I deserve so much love? I feel like I'm a billionaire when it comes to love. My friends, my wife, our 3 children, my mom, my dad who's in heaven, my grandmother who's in heaven, my uncles and aunts, random people sometimes that express such kindness. Someone bought me a coat the other day, a suit, just for my birthday. I felt so loved. Someone fixed my car the other day and spent hours fixing my car battery. I felt so loved. And this is the reality for all of us. This is what's true for you as well. When we live in our shame and then we shame other people is when we forget how loved we really are. And so recall the people that love you. Now, if there are people that you don't feel loved by, then don't include them. But dwell, like it says in Psalm 81, dwell in the love of the people that do love you, that you feel loved by in the way that you need it most. It might not be your mom. It may not be your children. I don't know. I mean, probably it is, but I don't know. The point is, find those people. Write down those names of the people that you feel loved by unconditionally. And if you are a shame type, a heart shame type, dwell on those names and in what they do for you. Like, write down the exact things. Like I said, this friend of mine who fixed my car the other day. Those memories are with me forever. And every time that I feel shame and I want to blast somebody else, making them feel guilty or whatever, or they're not doing enough, I go back to that story and I think, wow, I'm so loved. Let me now express that love to other people. Let me now speak and preach and lead and parent and etc. out of that love, not out of that emptiness, but out of that love that I've received. That's all I need to be doing. And when negativity comes my way and when people say stupid things and when horrible things happen to me and all that stuff, I go back to not my shame, but I go back to my love, that I am loved by the people that matter most to me. And that behind it all, it was the Holy Spirit that has led all of these people to be there in my life. What a gift, isn't it? What a gift. And my guess is that's true of all of us. All of us have those people. So if you are a heart shame type, this is my story. These are my tips. If you are a head and fear type, there's a whole different way of looking at this. It's a little bit more unique. Or if you are a gut and anger person, same thing. There's a whole uniqueness, and I may do a couple more videos on those types. But this one today is for those of us who are in the heart and shame triad, the 2, 3s, and 4s of the Enneagram. I'm a 3. Dwell in the shadow of the Almighty. And then second, dwell on the people that love you so that you can calm that shame down and you're not shaming other people. And when you do, because you'll make mistakes, I make mistakes on this all the time, go back to your truth, forgive yourself, ask God for forgiveness. Maybe if you shame somebody a little too harshly, ask them for forgiveness and go back to your heart. Lead with your love. Preach the next message from love. Have the next meeting out of love. Speak to your family and to your friends out of love. Whatever is in front of you, speak to yourself most of all with love, kindness, with unconditional love, with forgiveness. Forgive yourself all the time. Stop living in the constant Catholic guilt, as I call it, or Christian guilt, that condemns you, that tells you that you're horrible because of X, Y, and Z, guess what? It's all true, but not as true as you're making it out to be. And that half that is true, guess what? Jesus already took it under his almighty shadow, and he forgave it. He removed that guilt from you. It's no longer there. It's no longer there. You can now live in that victory. You can now live in that freedom of the love of your Heavenly Father. And you can remove that shame. You can stop shaming other people. Now you can say, I can now love you because I feel loved. And so my commitment, as I think of this, and as in many ways, I'm so thankful for all these revelations that are coming to me, and as I share them with you, because I want to live the rest of my life without beating people up with shame, without shaming other people. I'm at my best when I am filled with love for others, not shaming other people. Now, of course, there are times to defend myself, like with that kid back in first grade. Of course, there are times to defend yourself. So love isn't weak. Love is strong, but shame is weakness. You're bullying people. So my commitment, and I hope that it's your commitment, is to stop shaming other people, to stop living from that shame within us, and to live from the love of God, to let that fill you, the love of God, and people are near you, and then to speak from that love to other people, to be able to then say to others, I love you, I care for you. God is here to take away your shame, your guilt, your fear, your rage, your anger. And I think that's how we will survive in this world that can tend to be beautiful and also at times so difficult. But I think for the most part, this is a beautiful, beautiful world that we're living in, beautiful life that we're living in, or that we're living. So this is a very important video for me. I have my earbuds in, or whatever you call these, because I have music playing that is contemplative, same stuff that you're hearing, but it's more in my ears just so I could really hear it, because I wanted to speak from my heart, not from my just head and just giving you logical things, but I wanted to speak from my heart, because at the end of the day, that's who I am. I'm a heart person. And I wanted to speak not shame, but coverage, protection over you. My prayer for you today is that if you are living in shame and projecting shame to others, that you will know the love of God that is found in Christ Jesus, that is found in beautiful people in your life. Count your blessings, as it says, as the old hymn says. One by one, count your blessings. And may that blessing that comes from above manifest itself to the people that are closest to you. Thanks so much for watching. Make sure that you like, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell, the 3 dots, and Periscope, Twitch, Facebook, wherever you're watching me. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.